right, folks. This board has been anything yet but conventional since I became the person sitting in the seat. All right, we are already in open session, so we can all rise for a moment of silence and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now's the time we have for public comment. Spoon, do we have anything? All right, so then we'll move right into presentations to the board. So we will start with Mr. Houston.
What's that? They seem so excited that I'm getting to do this. Yeah, if you'd all come up and join me, that'd be great. I'll put on another hat tonight. Usually I get to talk to you about academic achievements, but tonight I'm going to get to talk to you about some athletic achievements. Coach Chapman and Coach Hillier were not able to make it tonight, so I'm filling in their place. And I also know that Deontay Pulley was not able to make it tonight. He is working, so he's trying to earn some money tonight. So I would like to acknowledge him. He was a state qualifier in the triple jump this year and went down to state. And then we had 4 others to be recognized tonight. The first one is Sydney Boyd, if you'll come up. She just returned. Sydney just returned to us from Florida. She's been down in Disney. Sydney's a 4-year track leader winner and a state qualifier in the triple jump herself. So, like I said, she just got back from Florida. So, literally, just got back off the plane, right?
Yes.
And then Hannah Huppenbauer, she's a 4-year letter winner and a 2-time state qualifier, academic conference and section. You're welcome. Our third one is Emily Minor. She's a 4-year letter winner, state qualifier, and academic conference in the 300-meter hurdles. And our fourth one is Deja Range, a 2-time state qualifier, conference champ, sectional champ, and all-state in shot put. And that concludes our presentation for the acknowledgement of our state athletes.
Very nice, thank you.
Yes. I'll go ahead and introduce Ms. Ritchie. You're next, I believe, and I'll save you guys the trouble of going back and coming back up.
Thank you. That's not on.
I just use my coach's voice.
Okay. I'm excited to be here this evening to recognize some students that have accomplished something really special in the area of foreign language proficiency. This year, Galesburg High School, for the first time, started a program where students have the opportunity to earn college credit by scoring high enough at a proficiency level in another world language. And so for our first year, we had 23 students test. We just really invited anyone that was interested in the opportunity. It was really nice that it wasn't cost prohibitive for our students to we elected to cover the cost for students that might struggle with paying for it. We already have access to the access test at Galesburg High School, so that was easy for us for our students that are English language learners. We also use the AAPL test for language proficiency, So that measures speaking, reading, and writing. And so students that scored at a certain threshold earned college credit, which gives them a seal on their transcript to take to Illinois public colleges for the credit. So we had one senior earn the seal of biliteracy on her transcript, and that is Grace Wenstrom. So Grace tested in both Spanish and English, and she plans to continue studying Spanish in college. So that's really nice. We had 3 seniors earn the commendation towards the biliteracy seal. So they weren't quite at that level to earn the seal, but by earning the commendation, it's still an awesome accomplishment. And there are some Illinois public universities that will still offer the college credit for the commendation. And so those 3 students, seniors that earned that, are with us this evening. We'd like to recognize them as well. The first one is Jadion Mukeba. And Jadion tested in French and English. Secondly, we have Ezekiel Biamungu. And Ezekiel tested in both French and English. And finally, we have Claudia Tembo. And Claudia tested in both French and English. And what's neat for some of these students, English may not be their native language. So if you think about it, they could be trilingual, quadlingual. It's really an awesome accomplishment. We hope to grow in the future and have more students test and take advantage of this neat opportunity. It really reinforces the idea that our students are not only college and career ready, but also world citizens as well, which we think is very important. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it? That's it. Thank you all for coming.
Okay, we will now move on to the next agenda item, which is the approval of our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Any comment, question, anything? Allison?
Lyon?
Yes.
Pickrell?
Aye.
Sherpy?
Aye.
Statham?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Glasnovich?
Moving on to our next agenda item, focus area 1, relevant skills that lead to employability. First on that is the administrative report on curriculum. Dr. Aslan.
Thank you. For tonight, we're going to focus on the pre-K program. We were informed this last week that the ROE, where we had been part of the consortium to apply for pre-K grant dollars, this was the first recompete in many, many years. And it's a lot longer story than this, but we've essentially had our program budget cut by $120,000 based on preliminary numbers from last year to this year, whereas we were originally led to believe we would have an increase. So this is obviously a huge problem for us, and I just before the meeting got confirmation that I, along with several other ROE superintendents, are going to travel to the ISBE, the State Board of Education board meeting on Wednesday in Chicago to talk to them about this, because as it stands right now, we'd be looking at serving approximately 80 fewer kids than we've served before, based on the grant dollars that were allocated to us. That doesn't even go into what we were led to believe we were going to get more. But even just looking at last year to this year, we're looking at a reduction of about $120,000. So right now, we're going to go to the state board and ask for reconsideration. But absent any reconsideration or any amendment from within the ROE in terms of how the dollars are allocated, we are looking at making some cuts to that program. But we don't want to say that at this point yet until we get the final answer on what the dollars will be. But we're obviously very concerned.
Questions for Dr. Aslan?
Why did you do that?
You turned the mic on, so I figured.
No, it's for you, 'cause
Oh,
you're on the
okay.
agenda, but I do have comments. I shared these to you privately last week, which I think I should share here. I think the ROE has done a really poor job of doing this, and I think they reevaluate how they're allocating the funds, because they're funds within the program offering that they've done before, which should be eliminated well before we eliminate children in our community from getting services. We're in one of the higher need districts in the 3 or 4 counties, and for us to lose programs, and they have programs with minimal need and full day services, and they're continuing to support that, is not acceptable. So I think they need to fully evaluate how money is being spent across the 4 counties, and we shouldn't settle for anything less than full services for the children in our community.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Next on the agenda are building reports. Questions from any board members or any of the administrators that are present? Any?
I'm glad the graphs are gone.
I do appreciate the changes that were made. It was much easier to read.
Now, I do want to say something on behalf of Mr. Houston and Mr. Spring. Skyward creates the old graphs, and so this does add a lot of hours to their time to prep it. So if you want to give them hours, so if you would like to give them some percentages off at Cornucopia, I think that would be or you could just give them to me because no. But no, in all sincerity, it does take them longer. So that's the reason why they were in the form that they were in. And so they did take special effort to get those into a more readable version for you. So I just want to thank them publicly for doing it.
Thank you, John.
I appreciate it. I will also make note, however, that this go-around, not every principal included demographic information. And I think that that is important to show, because I think that it's important for them as administrators to also see the reflection of the school makeup and the way discipline is looking, not just with the types of infractions, but with who's receiving those infractions. It can inform the ways in which we may be talking to each other as staff in the ways in which we engage with our student populations. That's my only comment.
The only comment that I wanted to make was I appreciated Mr. Houston, the part at the end where the little graph poster there of where students are going and what they're doing after post-graduation. I enjoyed that. Thank you. Thank you, Mindy.
What did I do?
You're saying Mr. Houston
Thank
knows
you.
you a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Next on the agenda, our special education report. Dr. Mashad.
Good evening. We are halfway into our extended school year for special ed students. We have about 12 students attending at Steele School, and they will be finishing up next week. We also have about 20 students getting speech services. Some of those are recommended, and a handful are kind of carryover from the gap we had with the online services. So we're doing what we call compensatory services for some of those students. So those will all finish up next Tuesday is our last day there. Also, we are in the middle of closing out all of our systems for this year in preparation to roll into next year and preparing things. And we are still looking to hire staff. We're short psych. We are, after today's meeting, we should be okay on speech, but we are short psych and 2 teachers at this point, are our 2 critical. And another critical would be our sign language interpreter position that we've been posting. We have a little kiddo coming back from Valeska that cannot function without a sign language interpreter. And I have searched a 4-county area. I've gone to ICC, and I'm not finding much luck with that. So we'll be working a secondary plan if we can't fill that position.
Any questions or comments from board members? Okay. Moving into the next agenda item, focus area 2, facilities that assist in skill acquisition. First in that area, consider approval of the steel playground renovation bid. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Questions? Ms. Ham, do you have any information that you'd like to share?
I think everything was in the packet. We're looking at kind of a combined bid for multiple items, and it's hard to see with the glare, so I apologize. But Mrs. Graves was able to get full-size pictures of what the playground will look like. The only difference is there will not be the green space between the 2 areas, and they will be closer together, just for some cost-saving measures. There was a question about a pourable surface instead of the rubber mulch, and we got the quote on that today, and it was a little over $100,000 for the pourable surface. And when we looked at a pourable surface for Silas, there was only a 5-year guarantee, and there was a lot of moisture issues. And with our high water table here in Galesburg, I would fear that we would have a lot of problems with that. So I think the surface mulch that we picked is probably the best course of action. And this will include the playground equipment that you see up there, the installation and the rubber mulch, perimeter fencing around the site, and then a concrete border that will keep everything in and will be permanent like we have at Silas.
Now, the fencing encompasses, how far out is that fence going?
So we're going to run it, do you know where the Boy Scout area is? The prairie?
Yeah.
The prairie plot. So it'll go in front of the prairie plot, a 6-foot fence, and then it'll run 4 foot on the west side, and then 4 foot in to enclose the playground. And then we're going to connect the existing fence that would be on the northeast side to the corner of the building, because we have kiddos that are gonna be going out that side door next year. And we have some students that are potential runners in some of our special needs classrooms. So we wanna fence that off for safety. So that's where the new fencing will go.
And just for future discussion, if we are ever going to consider doing that pourable surface, in my experience in other places, it would be highly encouraged to figure out a tile system for the yard there, for Jen's point, that moisture will degrade that surface so quickly. You know, we would have to also really seriously consider how to tile and get that moisture away from the ground. So at this time, I certainly couldn't support getting the pourable surface, because the subsurface really isn't going to be suitable to do that, especially considering the cost.
Jen, I can't remember now, the fence from the east to the building?
Yes.
So, did the bid include a gate there?
It did not, but they gave us a range, so we're well within. They
Okay.
quoted us for a 6 foot all the way around, which we didn't want to do a 6 foot.
Right.
So the 40 that I have quoted on here will more than cover that, and it'll be less, so we'll be able to put in a gate there.
Because I think you need a gate.
Yes.
For we agree.
Yes.
For a lot of reasons. One would be
Right.
safety reasons.
Sure, and a
That's where
fire
they
drill.
exit out of there.
Yep.
I understand that the poured surface is way, beyond cost, but I'd like to, I don't know if at some point we could look at grants or some alternative means of getting that, just to make the playgrounds accessible to children in wheelchairs, because I went to Silas to that rubber stuff, and I can't imagine the difficulty of having to push a wheelchair into that. We have some real nice equipment there, but to get the students to that, it's got to be a struggle.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, it would be a lot better for the students with mobility issues to have that poured surface, but we would just be putting good money after bad in right now. just
I
because
certainly
of
can understand that.
The terrain.
And your comment is interesting because a lot of the stuff we're buying is wheelchair friendly
Right.
playground equipment.
Access
You got to get the wheelchair to it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's possible just to get that poured surface or some type of a surface directly to the key points so that they can be accessible, or?
Would probably be best to do something like asphalt or something like that to try to get it as close to that,
Yeah.
just because that would be, easier.
Yeah,
and
I just know,
less
that's kind of beyond my expertise, but the thought process is just to be able to get there and not have them stuck on the perimeter.
I will talk with the engineer and see if, and we can probably move locations of certain items. So if he has any suggestions, just based on what we're going to put there, maybe we can run some sidewalks and we can put those accessible things kind of close together. So you could maybe have a sidewalk that would take you to the swings, a sidewalk that would take you to the rocker. I can't see it on there with the glare. But kind of contain those in a certain area so we could have some accessibility.
Good.
So I'll talk to Hutchinson Engineering about that.
But I'm also real excited that this is being presented here, because what it caused me to do is actually go out there and look at the playground. And prior to this, I just assumed that the playground was nice, because going to the school we just recently remodeled. And apparently we overlooked remodeling the playground. And it is in desperate need of renovation. So I'm really pleased to see this.
If I can just piggyback on that, I don't think it's so much that we didn't do it. I think this marks a change in how we're looking at our schools. In the past, the quality of one's playground equipment, until what we did at Willard, was dependent on the ability of parents to raise money. And here we're using district resources to support what it should be a central part of kids' opportunities within their schools. And moving forward, as we look at our facilities, it's going to be a district effort to play with our playgrounds rather than up to we're all in the same zip code. So we can't say the zip code to determine what the quality of one's playground equipment. This is a wonderful thing to see. The one downside I see to it is we're tied to this playground, I think, forever, I hope. And it would be nice, I can't say the cart for the horse, can I? But we had this as part of the facility study, so we know the age of the children going into a building. So hopefully it'll hit all the age groups. I know that they say it does, but if we knew, we'd target even more. But I'm glad this is happening. I'm glad it's district effort rather than a community effort.
And one other thing that I wanted to note, in your board packet, we had that there was a $10,000 donation from Galesburg Public Schools Foundation. Mrs. Graves found out this weekend that that's actually going to be increased to $15,000. And there's a specific donor that left an endowment, and I cannot remember the gentleman's name. Jenny, do you remember? So we will definitely be recognizing that individual when we get the playground, and there'll be a plaque in that person's honor. So we want to thank them for that.
Any other comments or questions? Allison?
Pickrell.
Aye.
Sherpy.
Aye.
Statham.
Aye.
Cervantes.
Aye.
Glasnovich.
Aye.
Lyon.
Yes.
Next on our agenda, consider approval of Legate Architects for building study. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Ham?
Do you want to talk about our process?
Sure.
Dr. Oscom?
So we, from last fall, when we went and did all the community outreach meetings and talked about what the community wanted from facilities as part of a lot of other things, but led us to re-examine our facility study that was done last year. And as I had a chance to walk around and look around and see what was going on, I thought maybe there was some other opportunities for some outside perspective on this. And so we put out requests for qualifications to 5 different architects, and we received 4 back. And then well, really three. We considered those three, and after going to sites where those architects had either built or added on to or renovated buildings, and after looking at the fee sheets to make sure that the fees weren't out of line, and looking at everything that we wanted to do in terms of try to reimagine our buildings, we felt that there was one architect firm that stood out, and that's Leggett. And Peggy Schnedden from Leggett is here tonight, and Peggy's sitting there in the second row. It's like church, there's no one in the front row, so, but Peggy's in the second row. And we really feel strongly that Leggett will be a great partner. One, they have a wonderful history of successful building projects. Two, they have a great process to engage with the staff and community to try to reimagine these things and to really put education at the focus of why we would make alterations in the building. And they're also close by. They used to just be in Chicago, and now they have a Moline office as well. And so, they're very close by to be able to be accessible for us. So we feel excited to recommend Leggett to start this process in earnest tomorrow, assuming we get approval tonight to engage them. There is no retainer or anything like that, it's just fee for services. We would just be paying as we go.
Questions, comments from board members? Member Lang.
Well, I drive by one of your buildings twice a day, so you have experience in Galesburg. I see that you did the bus garage we have for the city. I'm glad to see it's tried to bring in some light to that building and some mixture of materials from the precast to other forms of building. I was glad to see the variety, that you're not married to just one form of building. It's a big building. So I'm glad you experience in our community. As much as I would have liked the professional services to be spent locally, I think the firm you're recommending seems to bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to us, and I hope we can use it well.
Any other questions or comments? Allison?
Sherby?
Aye.
Statham?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Glasnovich?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
Pickrell?
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Next up, we have an update on district building projects. Ms. Ham?
We really don't have anything going on this summer pending our building study. We had, ironically, some work in the pre-K that was approved for FY18 in terms of doors and air conditioning. That was approved by the state for last year's grant. Unfortunately, it would have been better served using it for next year, but unfortunately that doesn't, that's not the way it works. But we are running extended year pre-K program this summer for expansion, and all of that work is done, and they did a great job in the maintenance department. And then we're just doing painting and general maintenance around the district this summer. So it's actually
Parking lot
quite-
Silas Willard.
We have a parking lot at Silas Willard, you are correct, that is going in, and then the resurfacing at the high school. So,
Any time frame on the parking lot?
the Silas Willard parking lot,
Right, that's
the end of July is
that one.
the last that I heard from Shane, so.
And I forgot to ask you today's committee meeting, as far as the landscape proposal for Silas.
Greenview has been out and looked at both properties with the principals, and they're in the process of putting together a plan, and they should be in contact with me within the next week. So we'll be looking at what they recommend.
What's both?
I'm sorry, for Steele School as well.
Okay.
So Steele didn't have any landscaping either when that building was completed, so I asked them to look at both facilities, since we definitely know that those are two facilities that will be with us for quite some time.
Yeah, 2 trees and a stump.
You want more than that?
I wish that stump was gone.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? I have one, and it's just in regards to, I guess, me having a mental update, knowing that we're gonna embark upon a building study and we've got some things that are happening. We're in a good place with our health, life, safety. We're,
I can answer that. So right now, what we're trying to ascertain is, the way health, life, safety money works is, when the architect comes in and does the 10-year survey, they will tell you, you need this much work done at each building, okay? And then they'll attach a presumed dollar amount to each of those. The question we're trying to get answered right now is, so let's say, for instance, let's use Mrs. Ham's example. We know we're gonna keep steel, we know we're gonna keep Silas Willard open, so we're gonna make sure that work's done in a timely manner, okay? Some of the other buildings that we are part of this building study, we're wanting to see how much of that money we could transfer over to larger issues if we, for whatever reason, don't keep that building open. So we need to get some clarity on that, but in terms of buildings that we know we're going to keep open for sure, you know, we've been able to green light anything that goes on there. We're just waiting to see with some of the other buildings where we're still wanting to find out what's, you know, how much flexibility we have, because we want you to be able to make the best decision possible. So let's say we're gonna, you know, this is an example, okay? It's an example. I didn't say we're doing it.
It'll be taken out of context. don't worry.
No. Let's say, for example, we were going to close Churchill, all right? We have like $8 million attached to Churchill. We want to know how much flexibility we have with that $8 million to be able to spend it someplace else. It depends on.
Okay, I thought it was 11, that's all.
Plus we already spent some.
And we have spent some, yeah. So how much can we carry that 8 or 11 over to the high school? Or do we just lose that ability? So we need to get that answer before we're able to move forward with some of those projects. But yes, in general, we're doing okay. We're not in any danger yet of being in violation of any laws.
that's good to know. No violations. All right. Any questions, any other questions? Okay, moving to the enrollment report. Any questions regarding that?
You mentioned that our kindergarten enrollment is down. What's going to be?
Our registration.
Our
How's the registration compared to last, because this affects our classes.
You can't really compare because we have a different process this year. So right now, we have about 150 students registered for kindergarten. But to say how many we had last year at this time wouldn't be comparing the same, because you had that major, you know, registration in August.
We only opened it 30 days in advance of
Right.
school starting, so.
People might be used to that. We don't know. We've sent out different communications. We're trying to get as many people aware of it as possible.
We had our first offsite last Thursday, and we only had 8 students register at that. So we have another offsite at Lombard, the second Thursday in July. And then our last one is at Steele, the second Thursday in July.
Well, and we also have this room opened up for registration in August.
Mhm. And in fact, people can come in all summer long. There was a family here today registering, a new family to the district.
So next year, we plan to keep this process the same. It'd be a lot easier to do some correlation and say, oh, well, last year at this time, we had this many. This year, we just don't. We know what the number is, we just don't know how significant that number is.
Any other questions regarding enrollment? Okay, moving on. Focus area number 3, responding to the changing needs of our community. First agenda item under that is the approval of board goals for 2018-2019. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Dr. Estes?
You can see the goals up there on the board, the screen. No one recommended any changes from first review last month, so I'm recommending them as written from last month.
Questions, discussion?
What happens with this then?
So let's go through number one, create a template to perform curriculum audits for all subjects and grade levels.
That's not what I meant. This is just sitting in a file somewhere, and we expect you to do this. Does it get publicized?
It will get
That's-
published, we'll put it on the district webpage, we'll have it as communication pieces, it will be on board agendas, we'll talk
Okay.
about it, we'll have periodic updates. And, different ones will have different timelines, because number one, we'll come to you with the recommended template. Once you approve it, then we'll conduct those audits. Number two and number three will take a little bit longer, because that's gonna involve a lot of staff. Number four, we have the rubric. I've asked the NAACP to review it, and they're coming back to me no later than August, so that we can, and then we're having a meeting with the NAACP to ask them to meet with our building and district administrators to give some, some dialogue to it and some context to it. So in whatever form that comes back, assuming it's the same, we'll then put that into the school improvement process this fall, and then the district improvement committee will review those on a quarterly basis. Number five, that is ongoing. We've got comparing each building's EBM worksheet.
Which stands for?
Evidence-based model worksheet to ideal worksheet according to the evidence-based model. So we have that. And then the district's plan will demonstrate effort to move from actual to desired. That's somewhat contingent upon our collective bargaining experience, so we have to get that done first. But then we'll be able to put a plan out to that sometime in the fall, when the budget committee reconvenes before school starts. So they all have a little bit different timelines on them, but pretty clear path ahead.
Thank you.
And just for clarification, because I know that we are streaming, number five is really related to the fact that we now have a new funding model for education in the state of Illinois. And so we have the ability to assess the way that we fund our education. And based on the model that has been presented to us as to what they say the 26 key factors are to a successful, effective education. So comparing what we're spending in our buildings now, and where does that line up with those 26 factors, and then what kind of adjustments might we be willing or interested in making to hit some of those other areas that may not be as well funded, or that we think should be better funded in light of the work that we do in our district. So I just want to make that clarification. Any other questions or comments regarding board goals? Allison?
Statham?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Glasnovich?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
Pickrell? Sherpy?
Aye.
Next, we will move to consider approval of board policy 6:3-2. Do I have a motion?
I so moved. Second.
Questions and discussion?
I would like to start with, I would highly encourage you just to approve it as written, okay? Now, we all know, or I think we all know, that the state recently passed some new laws dealing with dual credit. Those rules have not been rolled out yet. So I would highly encourage you just to approve 312 as written, because it talks to 310 as written. And whenever those rules come out and change, we will probably be coming back to you to recommend an amendment to those. But for right now, all we're really looking for is for 312 to agree with 310. And this will do that.
Any other questions, comments? Allison, before they change their mind.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Glasnovich?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
Pickrell?
Aye.
Sherpy?
Aye.
Statham?
Aye.
All right, next, consider approval of renewal premium with PSIC Property and Casualty. Mrs. Ham.
You have in front of you the premium renewal quotes for the 2018-19 school year. The property and casualty quote showed an increase of 7% over 2017-18, and the workers' compensation premium quote showed an increase of 12% over 17-18. Included in your packet is a total paid and reserved losses that kind of explains, why we're seeing some significant increases for both workers' compensation and then property and casualty. That primarily has to do with the Thiel Gym renovations that have kind of caused that to spike a little bit this year.
Okay, before there's any questions or discussion, I need a motion to approve.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, I called on you.
Maurice moved it.
Second?
Second.
All right, now questions or comments from Mrs. Ham?
What does the gym have to do with this?
If you look at the loss ratios for, it would be the 16-17 school year. So we had $281,997 in claims paid, but only paid $37,779 into the fund. So it was a loss ratio of 746%. Not all of that was covered through the vendor's insurance.
Right, so this is similar to our health insurance in that we're in a co-op, we're self-funded. And so part of that self-funded pool is to pay for other outside insurance. It's insurance on insurance. And so the pool lost money, they want their money back. And so this is how they're gonna get it back. They're gonna raise our premium.
Correct.
And this is a spike from the water damage in the gym?
From
Is that
Thiel
correct?
Gym. Mhm. So they were able to go back to the vendor's insurance company to cover most of the damage. But then we had some upgrades to seating and to the bleachers at Thiel Gym that were a code issue once we started to do the renovations. So the code issues were not covered by the outside vendor's insurance.
And originally, the bleachers weren't originally due to be done until a
Correct.
later time.
Correct.
Any other questions or comments? Allison?
Cervantes.
Aye.
Glasnovich. Lyon.
Yes.
Pickrell. Sherpy.
Aye.
Statham.
Aye.
Next, consider approval of intergovernmental agreement with Knox Warren Special Ed District. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Asplund.
Yeah, so as I told you in a letter to you Friday, this is coming to you a month late, and that's totally my error by not getting it on last month's agenda. So Knox Warren approved this in April, and what this is, and Dr. Mashad, please jump in whenever you feel it's appropriate. What this is us trying to deal with the fact that we can't find all the people we need, and so this is a sharing of staff, and it spells out what we would be charged if we used their staff for OT, PT.
Hearing and vision.
Hearing and vision.
Same, it was similar to last year.
Any questions or comments from board members? No? Allison?
Glasnovich.
Yes.
Lyon.
No.
Pickrell. Sherpy.
Aye.
Statham.
Aye.
Cervantes.
Aye. Next, consider approval of contract with Presence Learning for the 2018-2019 school year. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Asplund?
Yeah, I'll actually turn this over to Dr. Mashad. She did a lot of great work. We tried to find psychologists, and Dr. Mashad went out and found some alternatives for us because we just can't find them, so I'll let her answer this.
Can't find psychologists anywhere. We've been advertising for 2 years now. We had one retire this year. We need a total of 3 to keep up with RTI support within the buildings and all the case studies that we get done, about 300, 280 something. One of our psychologists retired this year, meaning that she can't work full-time. She can only work a little bit for us if we need her. So we're gonna have to rely on an outside source. The only other way we can meet our needs is to do online psych services. So we don't have to do online speech this year, but we're gonna have to do online psych services. If we do not do online psych services, we would not be able to keep up with our requests for case studies and our 3-year annual reviews, which puts us in jeopardy of due process if we don't meet those commitments. We've researched other ways of trying to do this, but it's a statewide issue for psychologists. Everybody is short psychologists. We do have one person who starts in the fall in the psych course for masters, but we won't see her for 3 years now. And we have another gentleman interested in joining us, but it'll be a 2-year process for him to finish up. He's in year 1 of his master's program. So they go to classes for approximately 2 years, and then they have to do a year-long internship before they get certified as a school psychologist.
Questions?
I see it's a San Francisco company. These are people licensed in Illinois to do services?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How do they, so they're,
The main headquarters is out of California, similar to our speech when we contracted with Illuma. They were out of Georgia. But they have individuals local throughout. The gentleman I dealt with actually came down from Wisconsin to meet with me and talk with me about the program. So they have local reps throughout the United States.
and the people we have will be assigned to one person, or every day it's a different person turns on their computer and does their evaluation?
No, we're gonna have to work that process out. We're gonna have to work with the gentleman that will be assigned as our school psychologist. So we'll work the schedule for him, and then work support through the buildings to have the students there to test. So different than our speech pathologists provide a direct service to students, maybe weekly, and then they test students that do their case studies. Our psychologists pretty much just test kids for qualification for special ed services or continued services, which is why they need the master's level. I've had applications from 2 or 3 different bachelor level, but they can't do the testing, and that's what our psychologists do, is administer the testing.
Do you have an estimate for this next year, what this will run?
We're estimating 60,000 to do case studies. That could go up. I didn't want to overestimate and overpay, so we estimated on average what we thought we were going to need to conduct those services. This past year, we had 2 full psychs, and then I had a lady that used to work around here who, her psych position is a little bit different, so she does a lot of stuff in the summer for her district in pre-K, so she picked up a lot of case studies for us during the school year on her time off. And so we can't go forward next year with that same process. We're only going to have 1 psychologist on board. So even with this person coming from this company, we will still be short, and we'll still trying to contract with our retired person for some case studies and the individual that we did some case studies with last year. And we'll kind of keep those younger kids, the more, hey, they need face-to-face type testing versus testing through a computer. I did online webinars with them and I sat in a lot of the speech stuff. So it's pretty realistic, but sometimes with younger kids, having that person in the room is a little better situation. So we'll try to weigh that out with the process. So I'll spend some time next year coming up with a plan, assigning case studies, communicating with this person that would be our psychologist, and then kind of managing that caseload with him. And then working with the buildings for support, someone's going to have to bring that student in to have that testing done. So we'll get that all worked out.
Any other questions or comments?
Again, it's not something I want to look to do long-term, but until I can get bodies on board. I mean, this is a pretty legally requirement for us to do.
You're saying all the people are having problems finding school psychologists.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
universal across the state?
Yes, sir. Every co-op, I had a directors meeting this morning. I'm on an Easter Seals committee, and we had a meeting, and there was 6 other directors there, and they're in the same boat. Actually, most of them are short speech and social workers. We're fortunate in our speech and social workers now. We're just short, well, after today's meeting, we're just short psychologists. Everybody is short psychologists trying to figure out what they're going to do. We're all calling each other. What are you doing? What are you doing? How are we doing this? Believe it or not, even Easter Seals is short psychologists. So it's not just the public school entities, it's the private entities also.
Because maybe we shouldn't try to do this, and it should be something the General Assembly looks at then. I'm sorry. We're hiring people to do this stuff over the computer with children, which is not going to work well. How are you going to get good data? I can't believe it generates good data.
You would really be surprised.
I would definitely have to be surprised.
I sat in some of the speech evaluations. I covered when our speech para couldn't be there, so I covered speech sessions because we don't have a sub for the speech para, and getting those speech sessions done was critical. And so I covered some of those, and then we had a couple kiddos to get tested before the end of the year, and these kids came to Silas at 7:30 for early morning, before school care. And he said, can I just test these kids that early? So I went over there at 7 o'clock and got everything set up and sat there through the testing. And I mean, to me, it was like the person was sitting there in the room with the student. I thought I was amazed, so.
So who sits with them? We're paying a paraprofessional to sit with the students? Because they can't be in the room by themselves.
No, I'm gonna work that out with the buildings. It'll be a little more difficult. When you do online speech and you're doing direct service, you can have a schedule. So I'll have to work how we're gonna do this testing between the buildings and who's due when.
So what type of person sits with them in the room is my question. I know
Anybody can sit with them. A para, you can't say anything during the testing. I mean, your job is just to kind of make sure they're sitting there, they're focused. You can prompt the kid to, be focused, but you can't do anything because all those protocols, they have to follow step by step when they're administering those tests. And so basically, I just sat there, and the students that I did it with were very well attuned and attentive. They enjoyed being with the computer. And I didn't have to do anything but sit there. I actually worked on some work things while I just sat in the room with the person. So really, it doesn't have to be anybody certified in anything to sit there. The speech para, all she did was pick up the kids, sit in the room, maybe deliver the kids back. The older kids kind of came on their own, and she just, contacted classrooms. So it'll be my first time for online psych testing, so I'll be out there observing, evaluating, and taking a look. I mean, it's different for me also, but if we don't do something, we put ourselves as a district at risk for parents going forth with due process. We have a timeline when a parent makes a request to respond back, if we're going to do that case study or not. And on 3-year reevals, we're required to do those case studies. If we don't meet those timelines, it puts the district at a high risk.
What age group student did you observe, or have you observed doing this?
I observed K-5 with the speech. So some of the kindergarten kiddos that were lower ability level, we had another lady that did contract 1 day a week that Tiffany had, knew this lady. And so she came in 1 day a week. She did our lower kind of kindergarten kids. But I went in there with some of the other higher kindergarten kids up through 5th grade. And it was great. I mean, they even, sometimes speech, I don't want to say plays games, but they use different like vowel games or consonant blend games when they're trying to get the students to pronounce or to work on what they're working on. And that was happening right there on the computer. So there wasn't maybe a board game or some homemade game that a speech path made in front. It was there on the computer, and the student was able to touch and move, and I mean, it was amazing. I had a couple of parents come in and observe. They weren't sure of it either. They wanted to pull their kids from online speech, and when they saw it just wasn't kids having fun on a computer in the aspect of not learning, they continued allowing their students to go.
So you would anticipate that the psychologists under testing with that would be comparable to the speech testing that you observed?
Yes. And I'll be there to observe and to kind of keep an eye and see how this goes. It's going to be a lot of work setting it up and kind of arranging that. it was for the online speech also. So we'll move forward with that, and I have Luann and Deb to help. They're great. So they'll be there helping me make this go forward. They're gonna have to start by identifying what kids are due when to begin the process, so.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I can report back how it goes. So.
Any other questions? Allison?
Lyon?
No.
Pickrell?
Aye.
Sherpy?
Aye.
Statham?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Glasnovich?
Aye.
Okay. Next, consider approval of trip requests. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Russell?
Thank you. You see before you, it's the Galesburg High School football camp. It's the same camp they've been going to for several years. Illinois Wesleyan, nothing's changed, so it's just overnight, so we now ask them to get approved before they go.
Questions? Allison?
Pickrell?
Aye.
Sherpy?
Aye.
Statham?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Glasnovich?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
Next item, personnel. Consider approval of our personnel report. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Questions for Dr. Bradburn, or Mr. Bradburn?
Wow.
I know, it's the second time.
Dr. Pepper.
Any questions for Mr. Bradburn? Allison?
Sherpy?
Aye.
Statham?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Glasnovich?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
Pickrell?
Aye.
Next on our agenda, comments by Board of Education. Member Glasnovich?
None for me?
Member Sherpy?
None for me.
Member Pickrell?
Well, all I have to say, and I'm excited about the playground, and I'm excited for all the work being done over there. Good luck. That's all.
Member Statham?
I have no comments.
Member Lyon?
I have no comments this evening.
Wow. I have comments.
Good.
The only thing that I'll say, and I feel like I sound like a broken record at times sitting up here. But for those of you who attend and you're in the gallery and you hear some of these reports month after month, and you hear the shortage that we have in trying to find teachers or special ed, social workers, psychs, etc., you have a role to play. And it's called understanding what your state legislators believe regarding education and how we are setting up guidelines and procedures and qualifications, et cetera, et cetera. And I will continue to say it over and over again. We have a lot of qualified people that could do a lot of great work, but the state of Illinois is not friendly. They're not friendly in reciprocation between states and education. They're not friendly when it comes to recertifications, et cetera, et cetera. So know who you're voting for and what they stand for. And if you're not happy with what's going on, call your local legislator and tell them our kids need better support regarding education in the state of Illinois, and particularly in our District 205. Sometimes it works. I'm not going to say all the time, but I'll say sometimes. All right, any future agenda items? No? All right, our next meeting will be July 9th, right here at 7 o'clock. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Sherpy?